Hello, and welcome to your favorite bookish podcast, Fully Booked and Caffeinated. I'm Heather.
And I'm Kelsey.
And today's episode is our first repeat author. Asterisk not including series that we're covering, because that doesn't count. Like Suzanne Collins, we've done twice so far.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so those don't count. That's not real. So anyways, our first repeat author, we're doing Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. And if the listeners haven't figured it out, this is the only male author we like.
I was just going to say this. I was like, the fact that our first repeat author is a male author, this is saying something.
Yeah. So we're covering his newest thriller because we're like, why not? You know, we like him.
Yeah.
So we might as well.
If you follow us on TikTok, you saw us at the book signing. We waited 12 hours, not really, but we waited like 4 hours to get a signature. So we really earned this book. And
yeah,
this was a good pick, Heather. I feel like we got our money's worth out of it. You know what I mean?
But anyways, what are you drinking this evening? Just tell me.
Well, this morning I had a delicious Starbucks, but wow, I had a lot of drinks out today. I went to Beach House Brewery in Belmar. And I had a raspberry shandy, which I didn't love. I was very excited for it. It was a little weird and like fizzy. I don't know. And then I had a sour. It was called like Tiki Paradise or something. I don't know. But it was pineapple, lime, pomegranate. It was delicious.
That sounds like a nice flavorful balance.
And it was the perfect, like, after sun, tropical sour. It was very good. So, highly recommend.
Very nice. Glad to hear it.
Tell me about your coffee experiences today. I say experiences plural because I know you.
I actually had one coffee, believe it or not, because this day has been literal insanity. My daughter's first birthday is Friday and the party is Saturday, so I am just running around like a chicken with my head cut off all week. So I did have a Starbucks this morning, but now I'm hydrating because I definitely have not been drinking enough water, so I need to hydrate. So that's where I'm at right now, but everything's fine.
Wow, a moment for your daughter turning a year.
Can't believe it.
And the listeners have been with us on this journey.
The journey.
Since you said you were pregnant.
I know.
You had to take one episode off.
I literally
took
one
baby.
Episode. Not me, not just going on like maternity leave from the podcast.
For one episode. Like she could have taken more, everyone. I told her she could have taken more, but she didn't want to. So
don't listen to her. Kelsey held me at gunpoint. She said, "You have to do every single episode. You can only miss one."
Then that does sound like me. That's very Virgo of me. Okay. Well, I shouldn't have brought it up. Anyway, please carry on.
I will. So we've already covered the background of Riley Sager in our first episode, The Last Time I Lied, which love that book. Would actually love to reread that book. Such a good campy summer vibe book. So if you have not read it yet, I highly recommend it. 100%.
Oh yeah,
and
for
as
summer,
you mentioned,
especially.
We went to the meet and greet in June. So I figured I'd talk about that a little bit. So he's originally from, well, I don't know if he's originally from, but he's from Princeton, New Jersey. And he ended his book tour for this novel in Barnes and Nobles in Princeton. And we attended and waited hours to meet him, which was worth it. I loved him. He's so funny. Like I wasn't expecting as humorous as he was. And he's just super down to earth. And I feel like he has this bravado that's so humble compared to like other male authors. I feel like if I were to meet another male author, he would come off as kind of like cocky and like a dick. And Riley Sager was not that. Found out that he's not only a Swiftie, but also a Disney nerd. So he's high up there in my books. Really.
And
really
he's so self-deprecating in a likable way. Even he said about his pen name, and he's like, because my name is not nearly as cool as Riley Sager. And it's like, no one's is.
I know. But it was really cool to like hear him discuss this book as well as his old ones. So I haven't read all of his books. Still a massive fan, but just haven't gone through his whole repertoire yet. But you have. I believe you've read every single book.
Yeah.
So this just goes to show how much you like him, because now you're like going out to like meet him. But it was really fun to hear him talk about the book And like now that I read the book, I'm like, oh, I get it, because he actually did mention during his like discussion panel that this book was split on like people liking it or not liking it. He said that in, like the very beginning. He's like, oh, who read it? And he's like, yeah, I've heard people like don't love it. So I'm not gonna say my thoughts quite yet. I'll save it for the end. But I will say that this was not one of his strongest novels. And I'll just leave it. All right. Did you want to say any praise for Riley Sager before I move on?
I agree with everything you said. I was surprised. It was also such a chill discussion, how it was kind of, he was taking questions from the audience. He gave a little bit of background, but not too much, because how much can you give about a thriller? And we also know that he likes Scream movies, because he was asking everyone what their favorite Scream movie is.
So there was like the Scream aspect for you, the Disney for me.
Absolutely.
He was like freaking out.
Do you remember his favorite Disney movie?
No, I probably...
Mary Poppins.
That's right.
Which is so random.
But I thought it was funny that the author that did the narrator that did the audiobook was Hans from Frozen. So he had like a freak out moment because he's like, oh my God,
he was
read
like
my book.
fangirling. Yeah.
He's like,
that's
Hans
amazing.
is reading my book. I was like, I love this man.
So he was definitely so relatable, and I liked him a lot.
100%. All right, our Goodreads description, as always. So, in the latest jaw-dropping thriller from New York Times bestselling author Riley Sager, a man must contend with the long-ago disappearance of his childhood best friend and the dark secrets lurking just beyond the safe confines of his picture-perfect neighborhood. The worst thing to ever happen on Hemlock Circle occurred in Ethan Marsh's backyard. One July night, 10-year-old Ethan and his best friend and neighbor Billy fell asleep in a tent set up on a manicured lawn in a quiet, quaint New Jersey cul-de-sac. In the morning, Ethan woke up alone. During the night, someone had sliced the tent open with a knife and taken Billy. He was never seen again. 30 years later, Ethan has reluctantly returned to his childhood home. Plagued by bad dreams and insomnia, he begins to notice strange things happening in the middle of the night. Someone seems to be roaming the cul-de-sac at odd hours, and signs of Billy's presence keep appearing in Ethan's backyard. Is someone playing a cool prank? Or has Billy, long thought to be dead, somehow returned to Hemlock Circle? The mysterious occurrences prompt Ethan to investigate what really happened that night, a quest that reunites him with former friends and neighbors and leads him into the woods that surround Hemlock Circle, woods where Billy claimed monsters roamed and where a mysterious institute does clandestine research on a crumbling estate. The closer Ethan gets to the truth, the more he realizes that no place, be it quiet forest or suburban street, is completely safe, and that the past has a way of haunting the present.
Wow, that was well written. That was long, though.
That was, I know, I was like, whew, gotta get some breath work in.
Just stop. Let's stop for breathing. Okay, it doesn't give too much away.
No, it actually really doesn't whatsoever. Like, I wouldn't. No, that does not tell me anything about this book. Someone disappeared. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that we love on this podcast is a dual timeline. And guess what? This book has a dual timeline.
Love a dual timeline. Riley Sager loves a dual timeline.
He also loves a dual timeline. So this takes place in present day, as well as a specific date of July 15th, 1994, which is the day that Billy went missing. So a majority of the flashback scenes from 94 were on this specific day. And I really liked this. It was really fun that he did a bunch of different POVs of residents from Hemlock Circle. So 90% of the time it was a different person. Sometimes it would still be, obviously there was more chapters of Ethan and Billy, but then you had a couple like other ones thrown in from their point of view. I wasn't
expecting that. And usually I thought that was really cool. That makes it like confusing or whatever, but it really didn't, because it was a short period of time. I think that's why it wasn't confusing. You know what I mean?
I agree. And just the way that he's just such a good author. So it really flowed very, very nicely. So the book opens up on the day after that fateful night with a 10-year-old Ethan waking up alone in his tent. And that's basically it. You're just like, okay, premise, got it. And then it just cuts to present day. And Ethan is awaking from a recurring dream he has about the night that Billy vanished, which is continuously dubbed the dream in quotes, capital T, capital D, capital D. Like, it's just throughout the book. Ethan basically has no recollection of that night since he slept through everything, is the vibe that I was getting. Or maybe he blocked out because he doesn't want to remember. And he doesn't know who slashed the tent or who took Billy. So after Ethan awakes, he talks about how he has insomnia, which was like a little Easter egg again from Riley Sager, because he's like, I'm an insomniac. So I feel like he took a lot of his, because also the cul-de-sac is based on the cul-de-sac that he lives on. So he took a lot of real life situations and like meshed them into this book, which I thought was also very clever and cool. The first creepy thing that happens is all the garage lights on the cul-de-sac turn on one by one as if something was walking past them to activate them. So the book is instantly setting the mood. Like, we're in this hauntings, creepy shit. What could it be? Is it an animal? Is it a ghost? Is it wind? Who could say? We don't know. We don't know. And it happens like more than once, this thing happening.
But it starts on like page 2. Like you said, it's just,
it literally,
we're
we're setting it. We know that the vibe of this book is just creepy. So the next morning, or the morning, Ethan discovers a baseball in his yard, which triggers a flashback to when they were kids. And when Billy wanted to play, he would just toss a baseball into Ethan's yard. And Ethan's like, oh, all right, Billy wants to play. Guess I'll go play with my bestie. So this was just some weird, quirky thing that
so weird.
Billy was like, oh, I want to hang out. So here's a baseball. Like, what if Ethan like didn't see it for like hours? You know what I mean? Like, there's he just throws the baseball, but Ethan's like reading, doing something, not
like
outside.
Has to run out and do something, or he's grounded. I don't know. It was a little weird, but okay. We're trying to really punch it in that Billy is a weirdo.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Ethan goes next door to Russ Chen's house, who was another boy they used to play with 30 years ago, who apparently nobody liked him, I guess. For whatever reason, he wanted to be besties with Ethan and Billy, but Ethan and Billy were like mean girls. They're like, no, we're besties. You can't be friends with us. So then it created this weird dynamic that I wouldn't expect from 10-year-old boys. Girls,
I wouldn't expect from these 10-year-old boys.
Yeah.
You would think that there would be the cool, athletic 10-year-olds who didn't want nerdy Russ to hang out with them, but
they're all
they
nerds.
were all weird. So I'm like, why are you guys, your weird is okay and Russ's weird isn't okay?
Yeah.
But I guess he had that temper or anger problems that they didn't like.
Yeah.
Which I guess is understandable.
Yeah, truly. So he goes next door to see if the baseball belonged to Russ's young son, which, dun dun dun, it did not. So the next he tries the Wallace household, where Ashley, who was the teenage girl that used to babysit Ethan, that Ethan apparently had the normal crush on, like his girl babysitter, she has moved back in recently with her 9-year-old son, Henry, to live with her dad, whose memory is failing him. And the ball also does not belong to Henry. So whose ball could this be? Ashley's dad tells Ethan that the ball must belong to that Behringer boy, since he saw him running around the cul-de-sac at 2 a.m. Ashley immediately brushes this off since her dad is currently battling memory loss, but Ethan immediately begins to have suspicions about Billy maybe still being alive. Like, his first thought is like, baseball doesn't belong to this kid, doesn't belong to this kid. Oh, the crazy guy, well, he's not crazy, but the old guy saw the Behringer boy running around at 2 a.m. It must be Billy. He's back. Or he never left.
This is,
who could say?
So wild that he truly believes that Billy has just been hiding in the woods for 30 years, waiting for Ethan to come back.
But, to each his own. Like we said, Ethan is also a little weird.
Yeah. And he desperately wants Billy to be alive so that he doesn't have to feel guilty anymore.
Exactly. 100%. So Ethan contacts Rajesh, who is another teenage boy from the cul-de-sac, who is now a detective, to ask him if there has been any updates to Billy's case, to which there is. Like, out of nowhere, there's an update to the case. So he meets Ethan at his home along with Ashley and Russ to explain that human remains of a young boy were found in the falls at the Hawthorne Institute, which is a place that's about 2 miles behind Ethan's home in the woods, and that the dental records confirm it was Billy. It is believed that Billy was murdered and then dropped into the falls. The police are not leaking this development until they can get a hold of Billy's younger brother, Andy, who is off the grid. So they need to all keep this to themselves. And that was like the first thing that like I zoned in on. I was like, okay, the brother's missing. He definitely has something to do with something.
Because people don't just go off the grid.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is also, I like that it brought in the Hawthorne Institute, which we'll obviously get to, but I feel like the fact that so early in the story they found Billy's remains, it kind of ruined this whole what could have been pretty early on. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I agree with that, because then that mystery is kind of immediately solved, and then you're left with this, is it a ghost? But I don't know, kind of feeling throughout the book. Like, I'm like, oh, maybe something really cool is going to happen that will make me believe like there's actually like a haunting happening, but that wasn't the vibe that I was getting. So the Institute was owned by Ezra Hawthorne, and his land was never searched after Billy went missing. And once Ezra died a few years later, the land was donated to the government, and nothing was really done with it, aside from maybe weddings happening there once in a while.
This was weird.
But it sounded like the grounds weren't, like there was no upkeep to the property. So I'm
I
like,
guess
why?
Just enough to have weddings?
I know.
I
So
don't
I'm like,
know.
what? I don't know. Yeah. It just seemed very overgrown and kind of claustrophobic in a way, was kind of the vibe I was getting from reading. So I was wondering why that would be a place for weddings. But I'm sure it was a cool building that was like a mansion. So I'm sure maybe like the mansion where people would want to get married, because like estates are so popular for weddings anyways. So Ethan recalls on that day back on 1994 that the four of them plus Billy all were on the grounds of the Institute, and he does not believe that this is a coincidence. He immediately is like, someone at that institute had something to do with Billy's death. And the kids never told anyone that they were there that day for fear of them getting in trouble. They didn't want to get Billy in trouble. They basically all were, we'll keep mum about this. And then once Billy went missing, they still kept mum about this. So
I don't think it was that big of a leap for him to think that.
No.
Because obviously he thought no one in Hemlock Circle?
Hemlock Circle, yeah.
Yeah. Hemlock Circle could have done it. But the fact that he brought it up to
Rajesh
and that other detective, or the
Detective
FBI, whoever
Palmer.
she was.
Yeah.
And they were like, absolutely not. There's no way.
Yeah, they
absolutely not.
Truly were like, there was no, and like that also like kind of threw me off. I'm like, oh, is it going to be someone from the Institute?
Yeah, like
because they're so vehemently are like, it is not anyone from this institute. How dare you ever think that? And also it's obviously weird that a boy goes missing, a young boy goes missing, and you don't check the grounds of a very large estate 2 miles behind where he was taken from. Like, you know, make it make sense. But the thought was that Ezra Hawthorne banned, I guess he had the resources and the money to like not let his property be searched, was what Ethan is led to believe.
Yeah. Or that he had so much money that the cops didn't want to risk upsetting him by insisting or whatever.
Yeah. So the next night, Ethan wakes up again from parentheses, the dream, and once again sees the motion sensors going off, like I said. So this is just something that continues to happen. He goes outside and he feels like there's a presence out there, and another baseball ends up in his yard. So Ethan is freaked the fuck out now. He's doesn't understand how this ball just randomly shows up behind him when he's been standing there. So he decides to buy a night vision trail cam to see if he can catch whoever is leaving baseballs in his yard. Which you're just asking for something to pop up on the screen and scare the shit out of you.
Absolutely.
No, thank you. Like,
also,
cool.
How much do you think this thing costs? He said it costs more than his first car.
That can't be. What is it, like? there's no way it could be like a $30,000 like camera.
No, I think his first car was probably shitty. I was thinking
fair.
like 5,000.
Probably.
That's
in this
wild.
economy.
And he was like, I don't
Probably.
have a job.
Yeah, I know. I was like, so
He was like waiting for his new job to start. So he was like, I don't have any money and I need to be conserving it. Anyway, I'll take it.
twist my arm.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. We get a flashback from Billy's POV, and we find out that he had a really big obsession with ghosts and the spirit world, which I loved. This was cool.
Mhm.
I liked that. I
Mhm.
liked this little tidbit about Billy. And this was one of the reasons why he wanted to explore Hawthorne Institute, because it was believed to be a place of practice for the occult. So when Ethan looks at the recordings from the trail cam from the night before, he believes he sees the shadow of a child on the forest edge. So there's like a blob, and he's like, it's Billy. He's haunting me.
It's like, that is a child.
He's like, I don't believe in ghosts, never have. Used to shit on Billy's ideology about this, but that is 100% Billy's shadow child ghost. That's just, it's him.
It is what it is. I mean,
It's
you
him.
can't change the facts.
You can't change the facts. So Ethan begins to wonder if Billy's trying to get him to solve his murder, since all the people who were with Billy the day he vanished are all back on Hemlock Circle for the first time in 30 years, and it's basically 30 years to the day that Billy was murdered. Oh, Ethan's immediately knows that he needs to get justice for Billy.
Because he should have done it 30 years ago,
Exactly.
but he couldn't.
I know.
So now's the time, 30 years later.
So there's moments in the book where Ethan references his ex-wife Claudia, and their relationship seems to have ended because she wanted kids and he didn't. So when they originally got married, they had the conversation of, you know, I don't want kids. And she was like, okay, that's cool. And I'm like, LOL, that's my marriage. Told Eric didn't want kids. I'm like, okay, fine. Hey, about that. So, but Ethan didn't give in. Ethan was like, no, like, I'm traumatized by what happened in my youth. I can't have that fear of my child being, abducted and disappearing for 30 years without even having an answer.
Mm-hmm.
But Ethan is very much hung up on Claudia. He leaves her text messages, voicemails that are novellas.
They get cut off.
Yeah, and she's not responding to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, ding, ding, ding.
And it all kind of adds to Ethan is just not having a great time.
He not having a great time.
His marriage ended. He moved back into his parents' house. He's got all this trauma, and he said he's had the dreams all along, but obviously they're more vivid and often
more prevalent now that he's there. Home.
Exactly.
The
so
baseballs.
Yes. So it's you're kind of left thinking, okay, is there a ghost or is Ethan just losing it a little bit?
Exactly. And as he's leaving another lengthy voicemail, a baseball just appears in his yard again. So where the fuck these baseballs are coming from, Ethan doesn't know. I don't know. I can't even try to figure it out because I'm like, okay, well, it's obviously not a ghost because a ghost can't hold a baseball.
I don't know. There were a lot of different ghosts in that book that Billy had.
True.
I think some of them probably could hold a baseball.
That's a good point. So Ethan decides the next day that he's going to go and investigate the Hawthorne Institute.
Great idea.
And as the reader, we get a flashback of how Rajesh was in the woods having a think. He was literally having a think. He was deep in his thoughts. And the three boys walk by and he had nothing better to do. So you know what he said? He's like, I am going to fuck these kids' day up because I am a dickhead. Literally. Like literally. So he follows them to the Institute, and Ashley ended up not being far behind. For whatever reason, Joyce had a mental breakdown, Ethan's mom, because she got fired. And then she cries on this 15-year-old girl's shoulder. And she's like, I don't need your services anymore, but also I can't watch my son today because I'm depressed. Can you still go watch him? So
Yeah.
she follows them to the woods. So you have this group of 5 kids, and they're going on an adventure because Billy wanted to explore. He woke up today saying, we're going to explore whether you sons of bitches want to explore or not. We're doing it.
Yeah.
So,
And if you don't want to do it, it's because you're scared little babies.
basically. They reach a road that cuts between the woods, and at this point, Ethan is really not into the idea of going, and he like doesn't want to cross. But peer pressure obviously wins out because
Of course.
you're 10 years old, and if you are the one lone wolf that doesn't want to do it, you know that you're set up for ridicule for the rest of your life. So while they make it onto the grounds, because there's a secret passageway to get in, and Rajesh dares the boys to sneak into the mausoleum, and I knew this was going to happen. He locks them in there as a joke. It's a joke. Haha, funny.
Hilarious.
But
Ha ha.
then the gate basically gets jammed, and he cannot get the gate back open, and Ethan is going to have a fucking heart attack. He is going to hyperventilate and die. Like, that is literally what's going to happen to this boy.
I don't blame him. He's 10 years old, and he's basically in a grave.
Literally. He's like, I literally did not sign up for this. This was not how I wanted my day to go. I wanted to like play Uno and some shit. Like, this was not on my bingo card for today. No.
So
No.
true.
Do not pass go. I don't want to go. So Russ and Ethan are actually able to slip through the gate, but Billy, being a little bit larger, he has some difficulty. So they're trying to help him out. And then a man comes rushing towards them, yelling, like, what are you kids doing? And the 4 of them basically ditch Billy in order to not get caught. And Ethan has that moment before he leaves where he's like, am I really going to leave my friend here? And he's kind of thinks that he has to. But then he has a moment of, no, like, I need to go back. So he turns around to go get Billy. But then he hears the man tell Billy, I told you yesterday to stay away. And Ethan just feels betrayal immediately, which so weird. But Billy had been here before and he acted like he hadn't, so this Ethan is now butthurt, and he's like, you know what, deuces, I'm out. He's pissed off because Russ and Billy were having like a buddy moment, and Ethan was jealous of that, and now he finds out that Billy had been somewhere without him, and how dare. So now he's just like, I'm gonna go. Like,
so when did he see Billy before they started exploring? When did Billy have time to tell him this? I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter, but
it does
Ethan's
not matter.
Very upset.
Yeah. So we're back in present day, and Ethan is investigating the grounds. He comes across a barn where he finds footsteps, or not footsteps, but you know what I mean. Well, I guess footsteps,
Footprints.
Right? Footprints, thank you. Not actual footsteps, the prints of a shoe. And an empty tuna can. So now we have some foreshadowing, because someone is definitely in this barn eating tuna from a can, which, gross.
Yeah, the tuna was oddly specific. He talked about the tuna a lot.
I'm like, was there a cat? Was there like spirit?
Like, did I
like
miss
stray
something
cats?
with the tuna? I don't know.
So then he goes to investigate the mansion, and he gets seen by a woman who runs the place now. And Ethan just makes up this lie. He's like, oh, my wife is interested in this venue for a wedding. And she's like, well, where's your wife? And Ethan's like, oh, she's super busy, so I need to check it out to make sure that it's viable. And she's like, well, you should make an appointment. He's like, yeah, I will, after I look at this place to confirm that we want to make an appointment. Like, he's just... And I feel like this lady's just done with everyone's shit. She's like, whatever, let's go. Like, I'll give you a quick tour. And then when he has a chance, he sneaks down into the basement and he snaps photos of a bunch of photographs that are down there. He's caught before he leaves. Of course he gets caught, because did he really think that he could say, I'm gonna sneak off to the bathroom and be gone for X amount of time and she's not gonna be suspicious? So she immediately calls the police.
And he's like going through boxes. He was down there for a little while.
He's
not
there.
A stealthy spy.
He's not. And so he gets caught by Rajesh, and he doesn't arrest him or cite him or anything. And, on the ride back, Ethan kind of brings up the fact that, like, him and Johnny Chen, who was Russ's older brother that committed suicide, that they used to, like, work there. So now he's questioning him. He's like, you definitely had something to do with it. And he's like, no, dude, I was there for one fucking day. I didn't like it. And like, I had nothing to do with it. And so Ethan's finally like, all right, I believe you. Like they have like this now, like this camaraderie. They're like, okay, like I believe that you didn't do anything wrong. Ethan's home looking at the photos, and here comes the first thing that like gags me. I was like, he sees his mom in a picture, and I was like, did not fucking see that one coming. I was like, okay,
No,
Riley Sager, you got me
not at
there.
all.
You got me
And
there.
I knew something was going to come back about
Uh-huh.
Joyce's job, obviously.
Obviously.
But I never thought it was this.
No, I didn't. But then I was like a little disappointed because I was like, oh, she's nefarious. Like we're going to have some cool backstory about Joyce. No, we don't. She was just there as a secretary and for like a hot minute, and she had her own money, which I get it. She's been basically living on her husband's salary, being a homemaker and a mom. And so she wanted to finally get out there and make her own money. And she does. And she buys her wonderful husband a watch that she was going to get engraved. But then she's like, oh no, I left said watch in my desk at work. I must go back at, 9:00 at night?
Yeah, that was weird.
It
could wait till tomorrow.
Exactly. I know she was going to give it to him tomorrow, but like it is what it is. Wait a day. So she goes back to retrieve it, and she stumbles upon what appears to be a ritual on the grounds of men just dressed in black robes, and there's just blood. I didn't understand.
Chanting.
Like, they're chanting. I'm like, where was the blood? I didn't know if it was like raining down from something. Like, I don't know how she saw it.
Were they covered in it?
I know.
There was no explanation.
She just said and blood. I was like, okay, so don't know
how
what's going on
much
there.
blood.
I know.
I had a lot of questions.
I had a lot of questions myself. So she's caught by her boss and fired on the spot. But before she's fired, she has to sign an NDA. And she can't tell anyone what she saw on the grounds, or she's going to get sued. And Ezra Hawthorne is made of money, and money is a joke to him, so he will sue her. So Joyce doesn't tell anyone what happened. And I was like, okay, this is over. That was boring. I'm a little disappointed. I was ready for something crazy to happen. Mm-hmm. So Ethan immediately confronts his parents, and he's like questioning. He's like, did you guys kill Billy?
I was like, watch your damn mouth, Ethan.
I was like, holy shit. Like, you really think, oh my God. I was like, he came in hot. He came in real hot.
He did.
He's just so like revved up.
I understand. And I was like, no, Joyce was like, you don't.
Joyce was pissed.
Yeah.
But she tells Ethan about that day and what she saw, which was a heart on a copper plate. So take that what you will. And that her boss was Fritz Vanderleer, who was another neighbor on the cul-de-sac. So there's just everyone is interspersed. It's crazy.
It's incestuous around here.
Yeah. So Ethan then obviously now has to confront Fritz about Billy's disappearance because somebody fucking knows something and the subsequent murder. And he's like, you did it. Now it's you. It's somebody on the grounds, and it was you. And Fritz is like, no, bro. Like, we had nothing to do with this. And he tells him how the day that Billy was caught on the property, he talked to him, and Billy brought up how he really is into the idea of ghosts and wanting to communicate with them. And Fritz is like, hold up, I know who you have to talk to. Like, give me a moment. So he brings him to Ezra. And Ezra, like, you can tell is just like, even though it's such a small snippet, that like he loved Billy and like his obsession with ghosts and talking to the spirit world. This was kind of cute. It was like, this obviously made you realize that, oh, the Hawthorne Institute actually isn't anything like scary. It's just a place where people that believe in the paranormal in this world have a safe place to do what they want to do.
Yes, and not be ridiculed.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because these are extremely smart people, like scientists and all these insanely smart people who wouldn't be able to do that anywhere else.
So it's, it's a place kind of like a safe haven for them. And Ezra loved Billy's thoughts, and he basically told him, like, come back anytime you want, like, open door policy. So Ethan's like, fuck, it wasn't Fritz or Ezra. He's like, who was it? He's just...
And also, Ethan cannot keep a secret.
No.
They weren't supposed to tell anyone about the remains. He told everyone. He wasn't supposed to say anything about the NDA. He forced his mom to confess and then immediately goes over and tells the guy, like, hey, I know what you did.
Listen, there's no end date. And even though Ezra is dead, doesn't mean she can't get sued.
Yeah, like that's an NDA for a reason. And Ethan does not give a fuck. He's like, I don't care. I'm finding out what happened to Billy at all costs.
Yeah. So we have another dream occurrence because now Ethan's basically having the dream every single night. And when he awakes from this one, he finds the words Hakuna Matata dude written on a page in his journal, which just was creepy. Like this got me. And this was Billy's kind of like catchphrase during this time, and then it was also his last words to Billy or to Ethan. So now Ethan is even more convinced that Billy is haunting him. How he picked up a pen and wrote, I don't know, but he did it. And Ethan
that no one
this.
broke into the house.
Yeah, I know. So obviously the signs are all pointing to you are correct. He has a discussion about this with Ashley, and Ashley tries to tell Ethan that maybe he's doing these things and just doesn't remember. And then she reveals the next big holy shit that Claudia died, which I had a feeling, and I'm sure you probably
did. You?
Oh, I did.
I didn't.
I didn't. I was like, this bitch dead, because there's just no way.
I liked that though.
Yeah,
I mean, not that she was dead.
What? No.
Not that she was dead.
But that was like a fun reveal that I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, cool, that guy was right. But she died, not in like a nefarious way. She just kind of had like an aortic aneurysm and just went. And it was like heartbreaking because then you find out that Ethan was ready. He was like, no, like I love Claudia too much to lose her. And like he leaves her a voicemail and says, let's do it. Like, let's have a baby. So that got me.
That broke my heart.
Right,
yeah.
right in the feels.
I didn't guess it, but once it was revealed, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I really liked that. Yeah. It fit really well.
It really did. And then because then you realize, oh, like Ethan lost someone else very close to him. And it could, it also shows like why he wants to communicate with the dead now, because not only to try to get answers from Billy, but also to be able to communicate with Claudia. So like, you're like, it's not, now you just really feel for the guy.
And he's like directing his grief over Claudia into what happened with Billy because all these old feelings are coming up. And it also makes you feel bad for him as opposed to him kind of being pathetic. I don't mean that in a bad way, but he also thought he was pathetic.
I agree with you because I feel like that's kind of the vibe you get from his character, is that he's like this meek man who lost the love of his life and now he's just kind of being a stalker about it.
Yeah.
When she clearly wants nothing to do with it. So, but then you come to find out like, oh, like she died, and it kind of like makes more sense, or it explains his character as like his mannerisms a lot better now. So he ended up buying a tent, not the exact tent, but the one that looks so similar to the one that he and Billy slept in from the sporting goods store owned by Russ. And he's like, I'm just going to sleep in the tent and hope that, the memories just come back to me if I try to like relive the moment. And it doesn't help. It doesn't work. He falls asleep. Nothing comes to him, but he wakes to find every single journal page just written with the phrase Hakuna Matata dude. And they're just like floating around outside. And so now Ethan is freaking the fuck out more so. And he ends up enlisting the help of Detective Palmer, who we brought up briefly. She was another detective on the case. And she wants him to help him remember that night that Billy was taken. Because like we said, Detective Palmer was really believed that it was someone that they knew close to them that took Billy. Because it's the only thing that makes sense. So,
and everyone really believes that Ethan saw who it was and he repressed that memory.
And even Ethan is like, I've tried everything. I've tried all kind of therapy, hypnosis. Like, I can't get it. Like, I don't know that I'm going to get it. But he finally does it. He remembers.
He's like, Billy's ghost is going to help me solve this.
Yes. And I need you to reenact what happened that night. And that is what should have been happening. That's what all those therapists should have done, is just bought me a tent and sliced it. Because he does. He remembers. And it was Russ who slashed the tent. Again, I was like, wow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was like,
and also, there's like over 100 pages left. So I was like,
oh, I know. And
are you sure?
This 10-year-old boy did not. Yeah, I'm like, okay, obviously.
Exactly.
I know that these 10-year-old boys aren't out here killing each other.
This cop also It just felt like she shouldn't be participating in this.
No.
I don't know. This
And she's
felt
like, oh,
outside
I
the
have an
scope
illegally
of.
taken Ambien if you just want to, like, pass the fuck out. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
it was weird.
I'm like, okay. So Ethan freaks out, confronts him, and Russ explains that he only slashed the tent because he was jealous of their friendship. And he's like, well, if I ruin your tent, then, like, my mom has to buy me a tent, and then I can host the sleepovers, and you both have to come. And I'm forcing you to be my friend. Haha. So he
Such
just literally,
10-year-old boy thinking.
I know. So he just literally went, slashed the tent, and went back home. But his mother, who now is super focused on Russ because she lost her first son to suicide. So now she's like, I'm going to keep tabs on Russ. Like, she knew that they went to the Hawthorne Institute. She knows everything that this boy is doing. So she takes the knife that he left on the counter. And even though he did nothing with this knife, he did not kill anybody, he just slashed a tent, she, like, hides it. And, like, buries it in the garden.
Uh-huh.
I was like, this is a little dramatic, but okay. So now
That's commitment right there.
So now, like, they're back to square one again. And Henry goes missing. And Ashley and Ethan check the trail cam, and they see a face of the Behringer boy, Andy. Not Billy. It's Andy. Andy,
It's
Billy's younger brother, has kidnapped Henry and took him to the falls. So Vance Wallace did see a Behringer boy, just not the one that they were thinking.
He never said Billy.
He did not. He just said that Behringer boy. So, you know, you leave it up to them. So Andy believes that Ethan had something to do with Billy's death because he heard the last conversation that Ethan and Billy had, where Ethan said a lot of fucked up mean shit to Billy, kind of like out of nowhere. I was like,
it was fucked.
Wow. He basically tells Billy that if you like ghosts so much, like, you should just die and become one. And I was like, that's a little aggressive.
It's a little much. He's calling him like a freak, a weirdo.
Yeah.
All because he didn't tell you that he went to the Institute the day before. It was an overreaction.
None of these boys know how to regulate their feelings and emotions and how to properly deal with them.
No. I mean, it was the 90s.
It was the 90s.
So,
this is also very, very true.
It was a rough time.
So Andy is threatening to throw Henry into the falls until Ethan confesses. And then out of fucking nowhere, Ashley is like, it was me. And I'm like, what? I was like, what do you mean it was you? So
and Ethan's like, no, girl, you don't have to confess just so that he won't hurt Henry. Which, like, yeah, she does because she's Henry's mom. But
also, it was her. So I'm gonna say that before we get this big reveal and, like, Billy's POV, I truly thought that, like, he fell into the falls and, like, they were all just searching for the killer when it was just, like, Billy himself. Like, that was what I thought big reveal was going to be. I understand that, like, he had, like, blunt force trauma, but I'm like, okay, well, he could have, like, fucking hit something on the way down. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean that it was inflicted on him. It was, obviously. But my whole thought process was, like, they're going to do all this work. He's going to investigate every single person on this circle. And it's like, we just find out that it was an accident. Which it was an accident.
That thought, it crossed my mind too. I wasn't 100% convinced, but it crossed my mind.
I kept coming back to that because of how outlandish everything was. That was just kind of
whole
where I was.
Of, okay, Russ slashed the tent and then someone else walked by, saw that the tent was open and snatched him. Like, no.
Exactly. So we finally get Billy's POV of the disappearance, and he heard the tent being cut open, but he, like, kept his eyes shut because he was, like, nervous. And when he opened his eyes and he saw no one there, he was like, oh my God, it's my boys, the ghosts. They want to be friends. So he decides that they're calling to him, and he has to go back to Hawthorne Institute, and whatever happens on his way there, it is what it is. He accepts it. And now I understand why they randomly brought up this goddamn road, because I didn't get it when they mentioned the road in the book, and I should have known that this was going to come back, but I didn't in that moment. And he's hit by a car and killed by a drunken 15-year-old Ashley. And I'm like, holy shit, okay.
That's horrifying.
I was like, okay, like this took a turn. And she confesses that in her POV that like she wanted to be caught. Like she didn't want to get away with this. But instead of owning up to it, she figures that, well, if I toss his body somewhere, it's going to be found and then I'll get interrogated. So she wraps his body up in a blanket and then tosses him to the falls. But then she gets away with murder because it's never searched. The area is never searched. She tells her mom that she hit a deer and, you know, everyone's like, okay, like no suspicion here. Like everything's copacetic. So that was what happened. And I'm just like, this was so chaotic.
If they didn't have all of this mess other than that, I would be like, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
Because all along it was an accident and it was someone on Hemlock Circle, but they didn't do it maliciously. But because so much had already happened, I was just like, I'm spent.
I know.
I'm spent. This is too much.
I know.
And then when she tells the brother,
Andy?
What's his name? Andy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, when she tells Andy, he goes over to her and Ethan's like, I thought he was going to hurt her. And Ashley's like, you can hurt me. Just don't hurt my son. And he pats her on the shoulder and is like, thank you.
And then just sobs. And I'm like, homegirl just said that she killed your brother. And that's your reaction?
And
like
this
I
man
guess
was...
I guess like he finally just has the answers and that's maybe probably all he wanted.
Which I have no. This did not fit.
No. And so obviously we have to have one more traumatic thing happen. So Henry ends up falling into the falls accidentally and Ethan just dives in after him. They're lost in the murkiness, darkness of this cavernous fall. And Ethan feels a hand pulling his own, but there's no one. So now he's like, it's Billy. And Billy's leading me to Henry. But of course, Ethan is still like, I don't know if I believe that. But then Henry asks Ethan if the boy saved him too. And now Ethan is like, all right, I believe in ghosts. Like Billy was right all along. And now Billy's
finally
a ghost.
We get our damn ghost.
And it was like, I mean, it was actually a very wholesome ending with like Billy, which I kind of liked because it was, you know, that he had such a affinity for ghosts in the spirit world and that he's using his haunts as like a positive thing and he's saving Ethan, which is kind of weird in retrospect because like Ethan couldn't save Billy. But now Billy's like saving Ethan and he saves Henry. And Ethan ends up adopting Henry while Ashley is in jail. And Ethan and Henry live happily ever after.
Yeah.
That's the book.
What'd you think about that adoption?
That threw me.
I hated it. I loved that Ethan was taking care of Henry because I am obsessed with Henry.
Oh, I know.
Oh my God. Best character in this book. Absolutely adorable.
Goosebumps, just reading Goosebumps every chance he has.
And such a little gentleman. Mr. Marsh, may I enter your tent?
I know.
So cute. And then when he was like, she's like, did you have fun? And he thinks about it for a little while. And then he's like, it was adequate. I was like, this kid is adorable. So I did love that they were both this kind of weird, quirky. Yeah. And, you know, it was weird that Ashley asked Ethan to take care of him. It was weird that Ethan officially adopted him.
Yeah.
And 18 months after it all happened, Henry's like, night, Dad. I was like, okay. This is like one of those, I feel like we talked about this with Only One Left, which is the Riley Sager we did for book club. The last chapter, he doesn't need it.
No.
You don't need it.
No, but he feels like he needs it. And
he's like I gotta tie up these ends.
It is like, what it is.
You don't.
Yeah, God. I wanted to like this book. I really wanted to like this book because I like Riley Sager so much. But I understand that they're not all going to be bangers and that, you know, there's going to be some. And I can also see why this book was kind of not received well. Because it was a little chaotic and a little messy. and a little like disappointing. I feel like there's so much he could have done,
hmm
but you know,
A lot of people said that when I was looking at the reviews. A lot of people said they really liked the beginning and where it was going and the whole paranormal ghost
hmm
aspect, and then it just kind of fell flat after that.
yeah. Which I mean, it happens. We've read so many books where we get so eager and we're so ready for the ending, and then when the ending comes and what the author thinks is going to be a kicker, it just falls flat, like you said, and it
hmm
happens. But there's people that also I saw that loved it, that they like loved
hmm
everything about it. They loved Ethan and who he was as a character, and so I
I
mean,
mean, it was giving Frida McFadden. There
yeah,
was so many twists. I was
hmm
like, that's enough. Thank you.
yeah, uh huh. But it was like, what did you make of the twist and it being Ashley the entire time?
I liked that it was an accident,
Mm-hmm.
that everyone was so obsessed with what could have happened. Everyone is looking sideways at their neighbors, trying to find some explanation. And it made everyone feel unsafe
Yeah.
and, to the point of people not wanting to have children and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a dumb 15-year-old kid who made a horrible mistake. But I don't think that Ashley's behavior throughout the book was consistent
Yeah, I agree with
with
that.
it,
That was what I was gonna
with her
say.
guilt
Yeah,
and
and I felt like her reveal could have wasn't. I didn't love the reveal of it either.
Mhm,
Like I was like, oh, okay, now she's gonna own up to it because like her son now is like on the precipice of death, and it was just because you have these moments like when I was reading, going back through reading people's summaries and everything, and it was a good point because there's a part in the book where she takes Ethan for ice cream, but they really just drive around, and she's talking about Billy's disappearance, and obviously now that she knew what happened, and so that's kind of
mhm,
icky situation that she's trying to make Ethan feel better when she knows what happened, and then when Rajesh tells them about the remains, she immediately goes to the bathroom to throw up, and that's because now she's like, oh, now they're finally gonna get me, and again,
mhm,
they don't because they still don't know it's her. And
mhm.
I almost wonder if it could have been like an interesting way that could have happened was it's the case is closed in the sense where they think it's an accident, and then we get like a POV chapter of Ashley and you find out like, oh, it was her.
She did it on
You know
purpose.
what I
Yeah.
mean? Or like even if it was an accident, but then she's like, I have to live with that guilt and everything. But instead it just kind of felt the ending definitely felt rushed. Because
Mhm.
out of nowhere
I also
like out of
didn't
nowhere,
like,
like because now Ethan just remembers like now 30
yeah.
years later he just now magically remembers that it was Russ, and so
Mhm.
it just kind of felt messy
Yeah,
in a
I
way.
agree. And the whole bringing the brother back, like you said, we knew that
That
he
was
was going
I
to come back at
knew it
some
was
point,
coming. Yeah, because they kept bringing it
but
up like, oh, he's off the grid, and then when
uh-huh.
he's in the barn and he sees the empty can of tuna and like the
hmm
footprints, I'm like, oh my god, like this
But there
guy's
were no chapters from the brothers' POV. There
and
were
like the very end when he like
the
hears
very end,
and like when he
yeah.
hears the fight.
There just really wasn't enough of him in
Mm-mm.
the book.
Yeah, I agree
So
with
it
that.
just felt like he shouldn't have been as invested
Mm-hmm.
as he then was. There could have just been more of him in it. Because that
Mm-hmm.
POV chapter was good. That gave you an idea of how he
Yeah,
felt,
it
but
did.
it was only one at the
Mm-hmm.
end. So it's like that could have been introduced earlier and it wouldn't have given anything away because there were so many different POVs.
I know. And for whatever reason, I just felt like the theme of jealousy was so big in the 1994 flashbacks. Like everyone was
Yeah.
just, especially like these young boys, and even like Andy, like being jealous of Billy always going off without him and everything. And it's just kind of like I could understand how maybe his plan with that was showing what could happen, nefariously when you're jealous of someone that has something you want, and like, oh, maybe the boys
hmm
were responsible for it, but it just never came to fruition in that way, obviously.
Yeah,
But I
because
don't
they're
know.
10.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just felt like the jealousy trope was a little overdone.
I believed it because obviously three's a crowd, but I agree. It was a lot.
Like everyone was jealous, which I mean, like obviously that I was a young child
hmm
and I've had friendships where I was jealous of certain people being closer. So like I get it. But it was like
hmm
all four of you are jealous. Like one person has to
Yeah.
not be I mean, I guess Billy wasn't jealous because I guess Billy was kind of the center of attention. So okay, maybe I do get it.
Yeah, which is
Maybe I do
also
get it.
weird because well, it feels like Russ wanted to be friends with Ethan, but Ethan only wanted to be friends with Billy, and Billy did not like Russ,
Mm-hmm.
and he got mad when Ethan would bring him around. But it was weird that everyone wanted to be friends with Billy, but then they're like, "Oh, Billy's so weird," and
I
Ethan's like,
know,
"I wish that my best friend wasn't so weird all the time," and
I
I'm like,
know.
it
And then
kind
like
of feels like you're
Russ,
obsessed with him, so
I
I don't know why
know.
you're so concerned with him being weird.
And then Russ and Billy were side by side in the woods together, and I was like, you know what, like, whatever.
Walking in the woods, and Ethan's like, "How dare you? How
Hmm.
dare you walk where I'm supposed to walk?" I was like, "This is getting
I was like,
intense."
does Ethan love Billy? I was like, oh no, the gay love story is Johnny and Rajesh.
Loved that, by the
I know,
way.
me too. That was
I
fun.
love my favorite part is that Russ found the men's health magazines and was like, "Oh, Johnny was trying to get buff. That's
I
why he hid
know.
these magazines." And I was like, "Bro, that is porn.
But that's
That was porn
so,
for your brother."
but that was a cute, not cute, sorry, but like a good way to show the innocence of these 10-year-olds and
Absolutely,
how
yeah.
they
Hmm.
don't think like that quite yet at the age that they're
Hmm.
at. So that was a fun little like throwback in there. But
Yeah, like unnecessary, but it made
mhm,
perfect
it
sense.
did.
And it also gave a little insight
Yeah.
into
That's why
Rajesh and
like honestly,
him.
I feel like I love the flashback different POVs chapters more than like present
Hmm.
day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with doing
I know.
dual timelines.
Because
One of the timelines is always gonna be better.
even Billy's mom being a psychopath and breaking her doll but a doll that she was
I'm like, give me
obsessed
more of
with. I know,
this.
again, I was like, okay,
I want more.
the mom's a little psycho. I didn't think she did anything to her son, but I was like, but she's
Mm-mm.
still, I'm like, give me some background on like this mom. But
Hmm. Like more sketchy behavior. I want more of that.
yeah.
But I do think because of the dream and because of Ethan's trail cam and all this stuff, the present timeline was very repetitive.
Oh yeah. And I think that's
And
also why I was getting annoyed. Not like I guess no, I guess I kind of was getting annoyed with it, but it was just I was over it. Like I got to the point
mhm,
where I was like, okay, how many more times can the trail cam go off and it be another deer or a
mhm,
shadow blurb? Like I don't know. Like I was waiting
yeah,
for something to fucking pop the fuck up on the screen, and that
mhm,
was what I
mhm.
was anticipating, and I
Like,
didn't
give me
get
that jump
that.
scare.
Yeah, and there was no jump
It didn't
scare.
happen.
No. So yeah, that was Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. It was a little bit in the middle. Did you have any other thoughts
So
before we
little.
get to the ratings?
I think that's it. I mean, I did like the individual characters. I
Mm-hmm.
think that Riley Sager does a good job writing
He's
characters.
like, it's like I can't even like fault him because I still like the way it was written,
Exactly. It
and
was the
he's still
story that was the issue, not the
and like he
writing.
still pulls you in, and it's I
Hmm.
really love his writing, but this story just wasn't it for me, and like that's
Hmm.
okay, that's going to happen, but
Hmm. No, I agree with that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all. I think we got it all because we had to cover. You had
I
to go
know.
in depth because there's a lot
I
to
literally,
get through.
I like
And
texted
we
you, and I
didn't
was
even
like,
talk about so many
I
characters.
know. I was like, I'm not doing discussion questions because my whole outline is just this book and all the many twists and turns that this man took us
Hmm.
on.
Hmm.
So my rating system is how many out of 5 shadow people did you give this book?
Not the shadow people. Okay. I am giving it 4 child-sized shadow people. That might be a little generous, but the reason I'm giving it 4 is because, like we said, I really like the writing. I think the story was the issue, but the writing was still very good. I loved the setting of this
Mm-hmm.
quiet suburb. I totally got what he was going for, especially because it was all of his books have this kind of reminiscent of true crime. Whereas you think about, like Johnny Gosh and like these kids that went missing in the 90s
Mm-hmm.
and they go missing from this suburb and everyone's like, oh, it could never happen here. And that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what he was going for. So I love that. I love the Hawthorne Institute and how it was all mysterious and who knew what happened there. So I thought it was set up really well. and I liked when we thought it was a ghost,
Mm-hmm.
but the ending, ever since he remembered Russ coming out of the tent, that's where it lost me.
I agree.
So his writing is really what keeps it
Mm-hmm.
at a 4 for me.
All right. I gave
Not my
it
favorite.
no. I gave it 3 shadow people. And I know that's like a little like low, but that was just the vibe. Like I just didn't enjoy the book and I wanted to enjoy the book. Like it even took me a while to get into it realistically. Like
That's true.
even when I started it, it was very slow. And like you said, there were so many cool aspects, but none of it was executed well. I wish we had more of the Hawthorne Institute. I would have
Hmm.
loved a lot more of
1000%.
that. And I would have loved a little bit more backstory on some of the characters, like Johnny, for
Hmm.
instance, and Billy's mom, and even Fritz, like in his whole. Because then my
Yeah.
first thought was like, I was like, is Joyce stepping out with Fritz? Like, is she stepping out on her hubby?
Yeah.
And no, it
Hmm.
wasn't it at all. Because then it was also that creepy moment where Fritz like looks at her across the street and like goes like, puts his finger over his
Yeah.
mouth, and I was like so I would have loved something really cool from like the Hawthorne Institute, which we didn't get. So
Yeah. I think the red herrings could have been.
it just wasn't my favorite, and I feel like I've read so many good books lately, so I'm just kind of like
Mhm.
it fell flat for me, and so I unfortunately must give it 3 out of 5 shadow people. But I still love you, Riley Sager, and I will
Listen,
still read
that's
every single
honest.
book you write because the writing was still phenomenal. You still had me
Hmm.
hooked. So yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, I would definitely say I was definitely being generous with 4, but
but
this
that's
is
okay.
probably my least
Yeah.
favorite. This and Survive the Night.
Okay.
Not great.
All right.
So, but like you said, we're still Riley Sager fans. We're still going to read everything he puts out.
Absolutely.
And it's still, you know what? I do think that some people will really like this,
Oh,
but
100%.
because we read so many thrillers,
Yeah, and that's just we're so saturated, and the genre is so saturated, and but
hmm
there's certain things that like I would read that maybe you wouldn't like, but because it speaks to me and like what I like, so it's just there are definitely readers that vibed with this and really liked
hmm
it. So it's
you know
just
what? Also, I think my hopes were higher because of some things that he said during the
I
signing.
agree, and I think that's
He
also
said,
why I had a hard time enjoying the book because
yes.
we went into this book a little differently than any other book we've read because we got to hear the author talk about it and how it was so nostalgic for him. He loved the
He said there was going to
90s.
be a lot of 90s stuff
There
in
was
here. I didn't think there
not,
was anything.
there was like,
And he said he was going to talk a lot about how Ethan came to the realization that him and Billy wouldn't be friends in
I
present
thought about
day.
that too and how I never got that vibe either. It just seemed like Ethan was still obsessed with Billy 30 years later.
Yeah,
So I feel that's another reason why I was disappointed
disappointed.
because
Yeah.
the things that the things that I thought it was going to happen didn't from
Hmm.
based off like what he talked about. So, and
Yeah.
then even like knowing he wrote this based off of things that he experienced, not like ghosts, but like the lights going off, he saw that
Hmm.
when he on his cul-de-sac and how it's based, and I love that it was like, oh, it's like a New Jersey town and suburbs. Like I agree, like I love that setup, but it just wasn't it.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we get for doing a repeat author.
I know. I was like, I'm doing this book, and I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, no, of course, the repeat author that we talk so highly of, and then this is not his
Uh-huh.
best book that he's ever
Well,
written. I
his
was like,
other books
cool,
are
cool,
just
cool,
so
cool.
much more complex. We even talked about
Yeah,
before we started recording. Last Time I Lied was so
so good.
complex and there's so much going
And
on
I
and
could
there's
not,
just
and I never would have guessed the ending in that book. So it just
hmm
was,
you couldn't put it down. This one, it took me a while to get through too. It
me
was
too.
not the easiest one to get through.
Yeah.
And it's not like it was a hard read. It was just
No,
I
it
wasn't like,
wasn't.
"Oh my God, I can't wait to
It
pick this book
just,
up again."
yeah. Yep, that's
Yeah.
exactly how I felt. Like I had like I was like, I knew we were recording, and I was like, I need to fucking finish this book. Like that was like, I was like, I gotta power read.
I was like, push through it. I was like, Eric, I finally finished the book. And he's like, wow, that's like the
I
longest a
know.
book has
Eric was
taken
like,
you.
oh, did you like it? And I was like, meh. He's like, oh, okay.
That's the best. Oh my gosh.
Anyways, all right. On that note.
More luck on our next one.
So that is all we have for you today. We still love him, I promise. This is not a bash at all. If you like what you heard, or maybe disliked, maybe you're mad at us because we didn't like this book, I don't know. But still, make sure to follow, subscribe, and rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you utilize. If you have any book recommendations or questions for us, you can email us at fullybookedcalfpod@gmail.com. Also, be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at fullybookedcalfpod to see our upcoming reads. Thank you for checking us out, and remember,
if you need us, we're fully booked. And we're sorry, Riley.
we love you,
Love you.
bye!